nice poster design. And then I also wanted to acknowledge a few people who were here. I see two. Commissioner McVoy, Alan. Is there any, last Saturday, Commissioner McVoy, Alan, I, John Burns, and Sean did a coontie rescue. John Burns and I had dug out the coontie in a parking lot in Delray Beach, downtown Delray Beach, where they're putting in like a townhouse or some sort of condominium development on top of that parking lot. And it was in the island, the coontie was in the islands. And we got 3 fairly nice chunks of coontie, which is a Florida native plant that is a unique host to the tala butterfly.
Which is an endangered.
Which is an endangered butterfly. And David McGrew got approvals from the city to plant them here in Lake Worth, and they are now planted. David planted them yesterday at 1 p.m. In Triangle Park. So David and his assistant, unnamed assistant, right?
City staff here.
So I want to, just thank them. And then if, Christopher, do you have a word or two?
Mostly to say that I unfortunately can't stay. I'm in my yoga clothes. I got to go up and teach a yoga class, more or less now. But I wanted to thank all of you for coming out, and thank Richard and all the people who have been helping him with really getting our tree board moving, and especially thank Kristi and Jeff and Dennis. I'm guessing you're Jeff and Dennis. There we go. I'm very sorry I can't be here, but I will hear about it.
Yeah, and I want to thank Wes Blackman, who's here recording it, so that people like Commissioner Roy, who aren't able to be here, are going to be able to review it afterward. So it's all going to work out.
Great.
Enjoy your yoga class.
All right.
Okay. That being said, we'll
That's
let
awesome.
Kristi take over.
I guess we let him slide since he's got a yoga class. Alrighty. So, as Richard said, my name is Kristi Moyer.
That's a Freudian.
In my head, I was thinking of another nursery that I needed to call. Okay. Kristi Moyer. I'm with Pine Jog Environmental Education Center, which is part of the College of Education at Florida Atlantic University. And I was asked tonight to come talk to you a little bit about a project that I've had the pleasure of working on, not only on behalf of Pine Jog, but also as a board member of Native Plant Society. It's been a really exciting project that found its way to Lake Worth, and so although it doesn't focus on trees, it does focus on natives and a common goal that we all had. So before I start, the partnership that was created was not only through Pine Jog, Native Plant Society, the Palm Beach chapter, the Chastain Foundation, Garden Club of Wellington, and of course Habitat for Humanity. So the vision, I only have about 15 or 20 minutes, so I'm going to go through these slides fairly quick, most of which are all pictures. Yay! But this is pretty informal, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me, or I can take questions at the end as well. And I think we have a pretty good team here that will probably collaborate a little bit. So this vision, how did it get started? Well, Pine Jog heard about Habitat for Humanity's and Seminole Ridge Construction Academy partnering and building homes at the Construction Academy, actually at the high school. And we said, you know what? We'd love to get involved and take this a step further as far as their education and landscape, design a landscape, and talk to these kids about the importance of natives. Simultaneously, at Florida Native Plant Society, they were talking with Habitat for Humanities on a separate, separately about, hey, we've received some funding from this donor, and we'd like to move you all in a little bit more of a green direction and look at establishing natives. all of a sudden we kind of collided and said, hey, why don't we just all join up in this awesome partnership? So we joined forces, and with money from the Chastain Foundation, we did our first home. It was such a success that they came back and they donated $10,000 more to Pine Jog to do additional housing. We heard about a cluster of houses being done in downtown Lake Worth, right here in downtown, just on the other side of Dixie. And we said, you know, this is where we can make a really good impact, because we have a cluster of houses, rather being spread all over Palm Beach County, that we can make a difference. So our goal really was to decrease the resources and maintenance for the homeowners, because these people, they don't have a lot of money, they've never owned houses. We want to make it easy for them. And as we all know, natives use much fewer resources, so that's more money in their pockets. But we had an ulterior motive as well. We wanted to also help the environment by creating wildlife habitats in backyards. So that's kind of where this vision got started. We also really, we were also very motivated to involve the homeowners. If it was up to us, now we didn't have the luxury to talk to every homeowner before we designed their house, but we wanted to incorporate their ideas. Because as we all know, our landscapes are a part of us. They're a part of our, you know, our sense of place. For some of us, I know for me, I like to create a little sanctuary when I go home where I can get away from the hustle and bustle and traffic. So we wanted to incorporate their ideas, and we were able to do that for a few, not for others. So the first one was 130 Southeast Street. This is the before picture. We unfortunately did not get to talk to this homeowner before we designed her house, but we knew she had a daughter, a young daughter, and she was a single mom. So we wanted to invite butterflies to our house, so we made sure that what we incorporated would welcome and attract butterflies, both host and host plants and nectar producing flowers that would attract the butterflies. The tree you do see here, we try as much as possible to incorporate shade trees into the front yards to help shade and cool the home. Also create canopy for birds. But some of these houses are teeny, so it may not be practical. And sometimes we just have to do what's going to work better for the future of the tree and the home, and sacrifice the shade and the large canopy and have to choose a smaller tree. This one right here is wild tamarind, and I'm going to leave it at that because I know Jeff brought one tonight, and I'm sure that he'll talk about it a little bit more. Alrighty, so this was down the south side. It doesn't get a lot of shade, or it doesn't get a lot of sun, so we wanted to make something that would stay kind of low because for the crawl space, so that they would have access. So we chose something like a dwarf holly, but on the corners we put shrubs that attracted birds and butterflies using some locust berry and some bloodberry. But for the daughter, along the south side, this was the north side, I'm sorry, the south side, we were able, because there's a lot more sun, to incorporate more of those flowers. And since this house has been designed, it's been over a year, I've talked to the homeowner and the aunt, and they said the one thing the daughter absolutely enjoys every day, being able to walk out, they have butterflies. And in this beautiful tree right here, this is Coccoloba diversifolia, common name is pigeon plum. This tree was actually donated to the project, but it's a beautiful specimen tree that you can incorporate. There is now a bird nest. So she gets to look out the window and see a native mockingbird outside her window. And we also incorporated, we left this mango tree. And right here is a small, I'm sorry about the pictures aren't really good with the light, but we incorporated a species called strong bark, and it's a medium-sized tree with really large white flowers, but they droop. And so when they, after they've been pollinated and they turn to berries, they have this large cluster of berries that are orange and red and yellow, and the birds absolutely adore them, but they also are pretty accents. Who says that native plants can't be beautiful? That's right. So 413 Southeast Street. We didn't get to speak to this homeowner, but we knew she had, she was a landscaper herself. So this is that was the during. But here's the finished. Up here you see these beautiful, very specimen, formal looking palms. They're a Florida thatch palm. So if you're interested in something that's a little bit more formal. And right up here, this is a gumbo limbo, another really awesome native tree that caters to many bird species. And it's very architectural looking because of the bark and it's peeling. They also call it the
tourist tree.
The tourist tree because of the peeling bark. Exactly. So what we did is we tried to create some privacy along the edge with a Simpson stopper with some color in the foreground, which is actually not a native species. It's plumbago, but it's very drought tolerant. And then up front you have some spider lilies and wildflowers.
Which is not native? The blue flower.
This blue flower right here, you see it a lot. There's a native variety of the plumbago. It's a native plumbago. It's a white flower, but it's not as showy, and it certainly doesn't bloom as often and frequently. But if one was going to plant a non-native, this would definitely be an acceptable variety. It is extremely drought tolerant. And, which we'll see a better picture of it, but Richard mentioned kunti. These are kuntis right here, and it's an only native cycad in Florida, but it is the host plant for the Atala butterfly, which is an endangered butterfly. Here's the backyard. Again, we just try to create some privacy for them. They want to hide this fence. So there's a mixture of species of firebush and I believe he put some coral honeysuckle up to hide the fence as well. Beautyberry, I believe Richard brought that tonight in the beautiful bouquet. This is a great little shrub that birds love the berries. It's edible and you can make jam out of it. Here's 222 South C Street. This is what I'm talking about, some very small properties. So you can only incorporate so many trees in them. This is the before. Here is the after. I wish we didn't have so much light. You could actually see a little bit more detail. But here, this is during, and what we did is we gave a little formal hedge in the back of a species called white indigo berry with a formal, this formal line of kunti. It's a very formal looking species. But then we sandwiched it with some wildflowers. There is some tick seed and some salvia to give it a little bit of color. These are the two homeowners. Very happy when she, again, another gumbo limbo. And when she saw the gumbo limbo, she started to cry because it was her favorite tree. We added the grasses there. It's a muley grass, and during the fall, it will bloom to these beautiful sprays of purple. But it gives a little bit of a beachy feel, since that's the kind of essence the house and the color was giving. And every house, we tried to provide an herb garden or a fruiting tree, something to provide them some produce and food. All right. 207 South D. Again, and the next two houses are fairly similar in design, but you have the Kuntis right up front. Here we have a spiderwort and a beautiful formal looking wildflower, and in the background you have coral honeysuckle that will be able to climb up and hide this chain link fence. This owner we actually got to speak with, he really wanted formal. He wanted nothing wild and crazy. He was a very box-like person, so he worked with us side by side to figure out exactly what he wanted. Everything we incorporated in his yard could trim up nice and square. This is the last house. This homeowner, she was such a pleasure to work with. She they haven't even moved into their homes. This project was seriously just done, so she hasn't even moved into her home yet. But she just begged me. She didn't like purple flowers. That was her one criteria. Her other criteria is please give me privacy. And I can respect that because I really thoroughly enjoy my plants giving me privacy. So what we did was we gave her some horizontal cocoa plum that's going to grow about 5 to 6 feet with nice big edible fruits, and a beautiful specimen Spanish stopper. If you're looking for a native tree that is a great wildlife plant, but can stand on its own, stopper species are really good, and this is a Spanish stopper. Same thing on the other side, and on the corners, again, we included those thatch palms. And in the front, for a shade tree, we gave, again, another wild tamarind for shade for the front yard. For additional privacy from her neighbors, we gave a little trellis with coral honeysuckle. And this is kind of the trio that we've been working with a lot on the houses. It worked really well. So you have the Kunti right here, salvia and tickseed, and then a formal hedge that could go in the back. For this particular house, I chose Simpson's stopper. When it blooms, the flowers, it looks like Florida snow. There's so many, and the aroma is beautiful. So you put it right outside their house, so when it is in bloom, they could smell it. And this is the backyard, again, privacy. And she wanted something more natural. She didn't need or care about boxes. So we gave a mixed hedge of wild coffee, and this beautiful flower that you see here is firebush and marlberry. Here's marlberry with these big sprays of flower, which the birds absolutely love. There's firebush. And I believe at least 2 other species, myrcene, and I'm forgetting another one. But we created a real wildlife habitat back there for her. She could feel private. She couldn't block out those neighbors, but invite a lot of birds. She's going to have a lot of birds in this little mini hammock we created for her. So that's about it. I think I probably went over.
Let me see the mulberry.
Whoop. Bring it back up. It is in bloom.
We've found a lot of similar plants, but we have a grass that seems to take over. So how do you deal with that from an organic basis? You don't want to use any chemicals or anything. And do you have a problem with that? You know, like some of those invasives kind of grasses kind of like, you know, over time taking over some of that.
There are very few things that you can do on an organic basis to get rid of grass that's been established. Grass is pretty difficult, one of the hardest invasives, especially from a land manager's perspective. I have heard recently some good things, vinegar and water, or... And is it working for you? You know, Dennis actually is probably a better person to answer that one, since he's more on the main side.
I'll get you.
Okay, I just have a second question. That's on wild bees. we had a lot of wild bees, but I'm really concerned that some of my neighbors might be using some sort of chemicals that might be, because I'm noticing fewer bees.
Right.
So is that an issue?
It is. I get that a lot from, I work a lot with Garden Club of Palm Beach, and I always get them telling me, oh, I planted these plants that, you know, that you or a nursery has told me that'll attract butterflies, but I don't have any. And that's the first question I ask. Well, do you spray? Well, no, not in this area. Okay, but you do in other areas, and does your neighbor spray? Because overspray from your neighbors will absolutely affect your yard. A matter of fact, I'm going to look at a yard tomorrow, and she just called me and said my neighbor sprayed something, and the overspray killed their grass and killed my trees. And that was going to affect any insects. So if that's something that they're affecting you, you probably need to have a conversation with them and say, look, I understand I respect your decision to do whatever you're doing on your yard, but perhaps we can do it more responsibly in a time where there's less wind, and so you reduce the amount of overspray. They shouldn't be casting it anyway. They should be doing a more direct, targeted.
You're nice. I just go over there.
Well, I'm trying to be diplomatic with your neighbors so they're not throwing eggs at you. But that's how I would handle the situation. But absolutely, if you're finding a decline, all of these plants are going to cater toward pollinators. Honeybees, butterflies, different insects, that's what we plant for, right? So we don't want to be spraying the herbicide, the pesticides, and all of that. But our neighbors may not feel the same way, and that will impact your yard.
Especially the other thing to consider too is that all insects have boom and bust periods, regardless of whether chemicals are in the area or not. And so one year you'll see a lot of a certain type of butterfly, the next year you might hardly see any at all. It really has nothing to do with the environment.
We have a lot of butterflies, but I don't see the bees, and I'm concerned because when I'm reading on the internet, I'm concerned about the issues with bees right now.
Obviously there's a problem, and we all know there's a problem, but I've had to have 2 hives removed from my yard because they got so massive. And to me, the problem was I had too many bees because I had like 150 species of native plants in my yard.
Okay. But Jeff has a good point. The population will fluctuate. So if you had a big population come through because of a swarm, you may see a big influx and then all of a sudden a decline.
Okay.
But
Kristi, thank you so much.
You're welcome.